Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Dr. Hannah Stolze. I'm one of the hosts of the Wheaton Center for Faith and Innovation podcast, Integrate, a podcast all about the integration of faith and business. I'm joined today with special guest Lauren Stibgen. She is a CFI board member and operations executive for International Capital Investment Company. Lauren is an operations leader in the private wealth family office industry and has served her current clients for 15 years. With deep expertise in human resources and development, her position has spanned areas of information technology, public relations, risk management, marketing, and philanthropy. She successfully supported a full operational separation for her client from an operating business they held for decades. And her goal is to ensure that our clients' personal and business needs are served and that our internal teams are all working towards the same. Lauren, it's so wonderful to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to see you, Hannah. I know we haven't seen each other in person for a while, so Zoom it is again.
Here we are. I'd like to hear, as we open up our conversation about your work journey to this point. I know you have a bachelor's in communication and industrial psychology and a master's of jurisprudence in business law from Loyola University Chicago. And I'd love to hear about your journey, maybe, college on. How did you end up where you are today doing all the cool things in your bio?
It's really interesting. I came out of my undergraduate degree very young. I actually graduated in 3 years out of my undergrad. So I was 20 years old, achieving my undergraduate degree and turned 21 on my first job. Back when I was applying for work, Hannah, it was the newspaper. I don't know if you're in that club too, but it was replying to advertisements in a paper. And I knew going out of my undergraduate degree, I really wanted to connect with people. I wanted to find an opportunity where I could help people. And my naivete at 20 said, human resources, that sounds right. So I interviewed with what I learned after accepting a position was a headhunting firm in the city of Chicago. And my young self was thrown into essentially a sales role when I was 21. And so it was spanning the realm of not only mining for talent, so finding individuals for jobs, but also finding clients. And I was grossly underprepared for that first job. No one prepares you to be sat at a desk with a pad of paper, a pen, a Rolodex, and a phone, and basically go do. So there were some tears early career, but at about 4 months into that role, it really just clicked for me. It was an amazing opportunity to meet just a broad span of different people. Being in the loop of Chicago, working with law firms and architecture firms, real estate, investing, all of these different businesses that in my young mind, I had no idea all of that existed. So it was really exciting to get to know the clients and the businesses and what they were looking for and matching those opportunities with people that were seeking work. In that experience, I was able to stay with that organization for a number of years. I started managing people. I was managing talent at the young age of 22 and managing women that were in their 40s, which now being a woman in my 40s, I am thinking about being managed by a younger generation, which I can't even imagine. And so through that journey, really took on a lot of leadership responsibilities, operations management, sales management, and spent about 3 years in training and development nationally as well. At some point, that exercise of sales and being on the outside really grew wearing. And I decided I'd really love to take my talents to an internal opportunity, and took that and moved into a corporate HR role where, again, a very new opportunity working for a private equity held manufacturing company. And I was able to really take my recruitment experience, implement North American recruiting for a company, and then move forward into an HR role. This is where faith comes in on my work journey. So I grew up primarily in a Lutheran Roman Catholic home. So while I knew about the Bible, I knew about church, I knew about God, I really can't say I had a personal relationship with the Lord. I would pray. I would pray about my personal situations when things got rough. And when I was changing jobs from being with this staffing and recruiting firm and moving into my new role, I was actually also going through a divorce. And so at work, a very fulfilling job. I actually, work is a great place to meet people. And I ended up meeting my now husband at my job then. And what I would say is that he was instrumental. He was the Lord's instrument in bringing me to my faith. Within, we went out to dinner a few times and things were going swimmingly. And he said, would you go to church with me? And I'm like, okay, well, this is different. No one prepares you for being asked on a date to church. But I was ready for something different and knew that he was listening to that Christian radio station in his car, which is K-Love. So a little bit of humor early in our relationship. I'm like, okay, well, the Christian music guy asked me out on a date. So I went to church with him, and really, it was overwhelming at first, very overwhelming. It was a large evangelical community church, so the music was different. The whole service was different. But I got to see the Bible in a way that was just so different. And I was being shepherded in a way where I was like, my eyes were opened. I said, oh my goodness. It wasn't until 30 years old that I realized that the gospel was the same thing four times. And as growing up as a Catholic, no one ever really pointed that out. And nor did I ever take the time to really sit back. And I knew all the stories. I knew about Jesus, but I really didn't understand what that meant from a faith perspective. So met my husband, now husband at work, received my salvation through that saving grace of meeting him at work. And so I obviously didn't want to have to work with my husband at the same company and moved on to where I am today. So very exciting transition. And I've been both married and working for 15 years. So it's been a little while.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love what you said about, we can all grow up with, the stories, and we kind of have an idea of faith and kind of who God is. And there's something about, learning the Bible and hearing the Bible from the first time. And I love that, it sounds like you've always loved people. And so, I'm grateful that your husband came along. And in that shift, when you start to realize what the gospel is and what it means, did it change how you showed up at work? What, did it frame your work differently? Did you see changes in terms, what changes did you see?
Not at first. Not at first, right? The Lord uses so many different situations to bring us through sanctification, right, Hannah?
Absolutely.
So I moved into a role at my client's operating company. Back, right after I got married, I took a significant pay cut. I took a positional decrease from my company where I was with my husband to my new organization. And for high achievers, Hannah, I know Dr. Hannah. So for a high achiever, it was difficult for me to go from an office with a door, with a window, with a team. I literally, my cubby was the size of my office, chair, cubicle. It was teeny tiny. And so, going through what I went through, I think the first year of work in decidedly taking a step back and thinking I was okay with that. But then that enticement of more and more achievement, it really, I had a really bad skin my knee moment whereby I had been tapped on the shoulder by my boss's boss for an opportunity, kind of paraded around the company as if I had the opportunity. And the individual that I worked for really didn't want me in that opportunity, and they hired somebody else. And so I was left with, okay, yes, but no, the door closed. And it was in that moment that my faith really, okay, Lord, you've shut the door. I would say that was my first moment, and then struggled a little bit over the next 12 months or so. Really, at the end of the day, understanding that the person that I worked for didn't feel served. And I think that was really eye-opening to me, because no matter where we're at or who is in front of us, whether it is a peer, a subordinate, a colleague, like a colleague or somebody above you, at the end of the day, you need to serve what's in front of you. That was like a huge awakening moment for me. And it opened the door for me to transition into the opportunity where I am now, that really allowed me to flourish and do more, really kind of picking up operational pieces along the way that were important to the client and important to where I'm at today with the family that I serve. So, as I said, it wasn't immediate, but I still see it. From an HR field perspective, and even Hannah, I think you manage and lead staff. I would say one of the challenges that I face, and I would be curious if you experience the same thing, is you're giving performance feedback to a team member or really looking subjectively at business. I'm really always in the back of my mind monitoring, okay, Lauren, is this true? Is this a fact about this individual? It's judgment versus feedback, and really checking my heart to make sure I'm not judging from my view of a human being, and that I'm really giving that person feedback that's going to elevate them, because that's what I would want myself. I don't know what your experience has been with that.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's always challenging. Confrontation is challenging, and people need performance reviews, like growing, like if there's a reason we have growing pains and our muscles hurt after we work out, right? To get strong, we do need somebody to be faithful to us. And it's a really hard space to navigate. And I think for student listeners, I love this. This came up, in kind of thinking through, how do you walk into a workplace for the first time and give performance reviews? And, a lot of the students that graduate from Wheaton get opportunities to lead. They're achievers like us too, a lot of them. And it's funny because my first leadership opportunity, kind of like yours, I was Army at the time, but I had 60 soldiers and 58 of them were men in my case, that you're going to tell what to do on a regular basis. So for students who are really green and they're going into workspaces and they're going to they need to be faithful to their coworkers and be honest. What recommendations would you make? I mean, you flourished with leading 40-year-old women who are young, I would argue. But
I would argue very young.
Very young. How do you navigate that?
You are going to trip, and that's okay. Number one, never be afraid to try to have a conversation that doesn't go so well and have to come back to it. Two, find that mentor in your life, and it can be a friend, it can be a professor, it can be someone external. There is no harm in role playing. I do it to this day. I have people that I really trust that I'll call and I'll say, gosh, I really have to have a difficult conversation with whomever. And here's how I'm viewing it. Here, you have to really think about what is it that you're feeling versus what is it that's a fact. We oftentimes, as we go to give feedback or we're experiencing someone, it's very easy to feel that their actions are about us. That's like 99% of the time, that's not the case. And if we really stop to think about somebody's behavior in the workplace, typically they're doing something because of something in their life that's impacting them. Why is it? And it can be something in their personal life. It could be that they're not feeling fulfilled professionally. There are a whole bevy of different things that people go through. And this is where your faith really can impact you. And thinking about how you put on, first of all, your armor as you go into work, and really lean in on the Lord. Pray before you go in and really think about, what is it about this individual that is wonderful? Mm-hmm. You know, how can you lean in and remember that they're hurting just like you? We all sin at the end of the day. And so checking yourself before you're trying to check somebody else, it's like the old, the verse in Matthew, like, look at the log in your own eye before you focus on the speck in your brother's eye. What is it that what's your accountability and how can you help them? So, yeah.
Yeah. How do you navigate that? This is an interesting one to me. As you were talking about that, it made me think. I've had different points in time over my career, and I love people. I want to know what's going on in their lives. And, having the capacity to empathize with people around you means you listen to them and you know them. Mm-hmm. How do you navigate that as a woman? Sometimes I feel like as a woman, when I know my employees well and I love them and I'm their friend, I've had people come along and say, well, you're too approachable. And, so how have you navigate that from an HR's perspective, between being approachable, being a friend, but holding people accountable to do their jobs with excellence?
It is really funny because I actually had one of my superiors the other day. Well, I know so-and-so's your friend. And I just stepped back for a second. I said, wait a minute. And I said, I don't employ my friends. I employ people that are here to serve our business, number one. So how are we all here and grounding in the fact that we're here to serve a business? There are plenty of people that I'm friends with that I would never employ. Yeah. And I love them still to this day. Right. Yeah, that probably resonates with a lot of people. But it is important to draw that boundary and to really have a professional line in setting expectations. When you write down, first of all, when somebody knows A, what their job is, and B, what their goals are, what are they accountable for delivering to you, so that you're grounded in having a discussion about their performance. It's not necessarily about the human being, although sometimes it can be, right? That's where values and culture come into play, so that you can have a very tangible conversation with someone that says, hey, here's what we value at CFI. So here's what we value at CFI from our students, from our board advisors, from our stakeholders, anybody who's invested. And if somebody's not modeling that behavior, it's having the conversation about why the behavior isn't matching what's really established. It sometimes has nothing to do with that person. And the best part is sometimes all you need to do is sit back and be quiet and really just observe, and they'll often self-select. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you need to let the Lord move. It's hard to be patient. It is hard to be patient. But sometimes it's seeking the Lord in those moments where it's difficult. So.
Yeah, it's so helpful and a good reminder of thinking about the things you write down, the things that you agree on together in writing are so easy, so much easier to follow up on as well. So that faithfulness to documentation.
It's hard.
It's a thing.
You're the supply chain professional. You're probably a lot better at process documentation than I am. And I've read your book and I know you're like a whiz at it. So for somebody that's like a definite feeler like I am, I have to be very, very cognizant of writing things down because I'm a blue sky thinker, and I'm somebody that will be like, okay, go chase X, but I'm not giving you the alphabet in between. And I need to remember that not everybody works that way.
Yeah.
So it comes with time. We all, like you said, it's like working out. We're lifting our weights and learning how to lead people. And I'm still learning today. I think you'd agree, Hannah. Like it's always a process.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of role playing, and I mean, I do that as well. And whether it's contract negotiation or just approaching somebody in love, because that's what we're called to first, right? We love God, we love people, and so sometimes we can't hear ourselves talk.
No, so, we're human, and so people are going to make you upset, whether it's a hurt feeling or an anger feeling or a displaced feeling. So have those people that you trust to go to with those feelings so that you can take that off before you go into the next. Yeah.
It's so important. And so speaking of challenges, and we talk, you're going to have challenges in HR with performance and, people in general. Can you think of challenges throughout your career that you faced specifically because you are a Christian? Or do you think there's challenges to being a Christian in the workplace today? We live in a weirdly dichotomous world, and I think it shows up in different ways.
I do think it shows up in different ways. I have not faced a ton of adversity for my faith at work. I will say that I'm very thankful. I think that I've seen fruit from people knowing where I stand. I do know that it has made people uncomfortable when I pray. I have prayed before meals because I'm convicted to do so, offering prayer to people. And I have had people share feedback that it made them uncomfortable. And I've had to say, I'm sorry, that's, unfortunate. I really, don't seek to offend anybody. Really meeting people where they're at with their faith. And it was interesting today. I had a gentleman say to me, we've had a lot of tumult in our environment for a variety of reasons. And he said, oh, hey, I prayed for you at church this weekend. So that was a beautiful opportunity for people to know that is meaningful to me, to be able to, I'll pepper in little things about little Bible verses here and there without even stating that it's a psalm or a proverb. There's great wisdom in the Bible, as you, again, wrote in your book. There's so much wisdom in the Proverbs and in the Psalms that can be uplifting. And oftentimes you can bring scripture into work and people don't even know that it's scripture. Take the look at the speck of your own eye before focusing on the log and the log and the speck, whichever order that goes in. I'm not great at verse memorization. I'm working on it. You nailed it.
You did great.
But thinking about that in the context of work and being able to say to someone as you're going through a coaching situation, hey, Hannah, you know what? I would really like you to focus on what's going on with you before you go talk to Bob. Because here's what I'm observing. I'm observing this log in your eye. It's not about you. It's about what Bob's experiencing. Bob's overwhelmed, whatever it might be. And so really thinking about that wisdom that's so in the Word and knowing that the Word is alive in us if we're in it every day and using that. And people remember those little things along the way. What I have seen more, Hannah, is how faith has impacted women, Christian women across different platforms that I'm involved with. So I'm involved with a secular community that is all over LinkedIn called Chief. And I joined Chief because, like you, worked with a lot of men and was seeking opportunities to connect with other executive women in my industry. And goodness, has the Lord just blessed that. I found a group of Christian women on this platform. And there are about 312, give or take, women that participate in this forum. And women culturally are trained to show up to work and told that they need to behave like men in order to achieve and be successful.
Yeah.
I would argue that the Lord has equipped women differently and very specially for their work. Many times in the New Testament, translated the word Ezer. There's the word Ezer, and Ezer is helper. Women are called helpers, and that is our nature. And there's a lot of power in the humility of being a helper and being in an environment like that. So I would say being countercultural in terms of how we see our hubris and our humility, and not this clawing at trying to be something that we're really not. We're not. And that doesn't mean we're not exceptional leaders. It just means we do show up differently, but we should celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it's interesting, there's so much research, like in the servant leadership space, that, leaders that really have a heart to help, to see, to empower other people, are really a lot of, like most of the time the research would show, are more effective as leaders. And so I think it's interesting that God, puts different attributes in all of us, that we can be complementary to each other, that we can learn from each other. Some men need to learn to be more helpful. and some women do need to learn, you don't need to go to work and act like a man, but you know when to step up and when to stand up for somebody, and have some valor in a helpful way, but to do it in a way that really does have impact. And I love what you said about that, and thinking about women and our role and the things we can step into. Can you tell us more about Chief, and why is it important for women in leadership to be in community? Why, I love to tell us more about, joining it and what that's looked like over your career.
So it has been interesting. I've been on this platform for now just about 2 years. And, what I have seen is that the cultural issues, the broad platform itself, is actually getting a lot of controversy. You can, just type in Chief on LinkedIn and you'll see all of the commentary and all of the upsets, ranging from people in the Jewish community to the African-American community, and just not feeling included and feeling some persecution. It's actually driven the platform to create what they're calling listening sessions to different communities. And actually what's very interesting is that a lot of Christian women have left the platform because they are very pro-choice, exceptionally interested in, there is no discussion about pro-life, pro-choice. It's pro-choice. And so we've had a lot of women leave the platform out of their conviction for life, which I respect 100%. And so those of us that are still on the platform are really convicted. If we're not the light in the darkness, if we're not in the market, everybody, you're in the market. You're going to see this no matter where you go. And it is incumbent upon us to be the light of Christ in the darkest of dark places, to really offer an opportunity for something different. The Christian community has asked for a listening session, and we've been told no. So we created our own listening session to really find out from this group of 300 women what it is they're seeking in community, where we have seen a ton of impact is through prayer. So I and a colleague of mine in Dallas started to pray for women and offer 2 sessions a week. Sometimes I have 1 woman join. Sometimes I have 10 women join. The transformation I have seen just through praying over women that are oftentimes leading large groups of people. 1, 2, they're a breadwinner in the home. 3, they have children that they're managing and balancing. So you're speaking about people that have a tremendous burden that is in their life and that they're juggling. That's not to say that men don't have tremendous burdens, but these women are really, some of them in tech, losing their jobs. Some people are just have feelings of just anger, and just watching how prayer has just changed and transformed these ladies to the point where they can get to a new opportunity that they're celebrating and they're praising God, and they're just able to shout that not only within our small community, but on a platform like LinkedIn or on the announcement page on Chief is a huge deal. It's so important. So we also want to appeal to those that I started to call them Christian curious. Mm-hmm. There is a better way. So, we're trying to implement different things that we can gather as Christians all we want and build each other up, which is so important. But until we put our foot into the community and really tap into those people that are Christian curious, we're just talking to ourselves. And that's what we're called to do at all. Yeah. So go forth and make disciples of all nations. Hey, there are a lot of people at work that need Jesus. I was one of them. And my husband was bold enough to ask me to church. So
I love that. That is so, it's such a good reminder. And, we do have this, if you're going to be light in the darkness, you got to get close enough to some darkness to shed some light, right?
Sometimes it's hot. Like you're on the fringe of that river, man. It's not nice. It can be a little hot. So,
yeah. But such a, so do you have a guiding scripture or a passage that, in your life that maybe we could learn from today?
Yeah, I love Ephesians 3:20 and 21. And again, probably won't get it perfect, so I'm going to read it. It's to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power of the work that is within us. To him be the glory in the church of Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Thinking far more abundantly, our abundance comes from the Lord. It doesn't come from our paycheck. It doesn't come from our title. It doesn't come from a boss or a colleague. The abundance that we receive is from the Lord. And so remembering that he's going to do far more than all we could ever ask or think about. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me. And then remembering that he's at work within you. If you have your salvation in Jesus Christ, you have the Holy Spirit every single day. You have Christ walking with you every day as your intercessor, as your guide, going before you. It's incredible. So that's been abundance is a huge word for me this year, and remembering that it comes from above. It's really important.
I love it. It is so important. I agree. Thank you for sharing that. And I love this. I love to think about practical takeaways. When you talk to somebody, you're like, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I change? Because I talked to Lauren Stibgen today. And I think one of the things that you said earlier, like we have interviewed so many people since I think we launched the podcast back in 2020, and I've talked to dozens of people. Do you know that you're the first person that's ever said that somebody was offended by being prayed for? I have so many people say nobody's ever said no. And I always think in the back of my mind, I'm sure sometimes maybe people don't say no because they feel like it's awkward. Maybe you're just that anointed that it's always the exact right moment. And I really just appreciate your honesty and in talking about that, because there's an opportunity, to be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. But then at the same time, it is a part of who you are. And then your colleagues come and share and connect with you in that way. and they go to church and pray for you. And so I think one of the practical things I took away from this is like, oh yeah, that's right. It's actually better to be in a space where people come back and tell you and say, oh, I'm uncomfortable with, really at the end of the day, who you are. But then it also opens up this opportunity to be in a faith community and spaces where you're working and to be praying for each other. So I love that. I would tell students, like, be bold. And it's okay. Not 100% of Christians always have people say yes to prayer or love it. So thank you for your honesty. What would you tell students to do as a takeaway from today and, your thoughts and your experiences with Chief and your journey? During telling it, like, think about this in the place you go to work tomorrow, or if we have a listener who's going to work tomorrow, what is one great thing to say? Think about this.
Oh boy. I think simply start your day in the Word and with the Lord. That is going to change your day. It is going to change the trajectory of how you show up. I really get into that habit. If you can start now and really find somebody to hold you accountable to that, or a group that you can join that, where you're at least chatting with somebody that holds you accountable to being in the Word in the morning, even if it's for 10 minutes. The Lord doesn't measure how long we're doing it. But even 5 minutes in a verse or an app, I know our students are probably more apt to use their phone and have a Bible verse pop up to them every day. But guide your work with the Word and figure out how that wisdom can speak into what you're needing to do in that day. So that would be my practical, tactical advice. I wish I knew that when I was 20.
I know, me too. Yeah, that your posture in the morning determines your entire day, right? Mm-hmm. It really does.
Make your bed. That's an Army thing, right? I'm sure. That was like a big military thing.
It was.
They do say that making your bed is a good habit.
Oh, wonderful, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey, and just for the wisdom that you have to share with us. Thank you for also all the work you're doing with the Center for Faith and Innovation. It's so exciting to have you on the board, and I'm excited for the women and the students at Wheaton that are going to be impacted by your story and your testimony and just who you are. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me today.
Thanks, Hannah. It was a pleasure.